In my last lecture, I created part one of working with C structures, and I'm going to follow that up with a part two, but this is not part two. This is in between part one and part two of C structures. I need to introduce you to a new C library function called strtok, which stands for string tokenizer. So let's recall that the data file that we're working with, the Wells Fargo data file, is a big long line of text that we're reading into the program as that long line. And so what we want to do now is we want to break up the fields. We want to be able to pick off the date, the amount, the star, the check number, and the description, and break them up so that each one is stored in a structure. And so I have to take this intermediate step to show you folks how to do that before we move on to store everything into the structures. Okay, so here is the C++ reference guide for strtok. It's the closest thing to the split function in Python, if you're familiar with Python. And we will make a sequence of calls to this function over and over against the same string, and I'll show you how that works. It takes two arguments. So strtok, when it's called, it's going to return a pointer, either a null or a valid pointer to somewhere in the string that is the subject of the call. And the second parameter here is a literal double-quoted string. This one has got 4 characters, a space, a comma, a period, and a dash, meaning that when strtok is called in this example, it's going to scan characters in this string up here, only breaking when it hits one of these 4 characters. Okay, let's see how this works. So in the current program, strtok.c, turn your attention to lines 28. We'll get back to all that blue stuff later. Okay, so starting at line 28, we declare the buffer. You're used to seeing this. We open the file and test that we successfully opened. We print a message to the screen saying we're reading the file. And then in the while loop, this is where the business happens, 37 through 40, we call fgetString. And it grabs a line of text from Wells Fargo data, CSV, through this FP file pointer. And we say get a max of 200 characters and stuff it into line of text. Well, I made a big long comment here to show you what line of text actually looks like. It is an array of 200 characters. And so in memory, line of text is accessed by offset. And so line of text 0 would return the first character in the array. And since we just read a line in, you can see the first character of the array on line 10 is the double quote followed by 2/19/21 date. There's the comma separator way out here, and then you see the negative $20 and so on and so forth. Now, if I jump out of here, you can see that's this line. And I put in, through purchase in the following space. I didn't put all this in for lack of room on the display, but you can see here's purchase, there's the trailing space, and then pretty soon you get all the way to the end where there's a new line. But this gives you the idea. So let me now make the first call to strtok, put the code in so you can see how to do that, and then we'll come back and we'll look at this comment to see what's going on. Okay, so the outer loop here, well, I'll just say the while loop is where we get the string from the file. Inside the loop, I want to create a pointer to a character, so I'll call it PCH, just like they did in the manual. And then I'm going to make a call to strtok, and I'm going to say line of text is the subject buffer that you're going to be looking at, and make sure that you read all characters until you hit comma. Okay, and then I'm going to come down here, and strtok's going to return a null which is a 0, to PCH if it doesn't see anything. But if it does see something, it's going to return a valid pointer. And so I'm going to change line of text in this printf call to PCH. Now, I've just changed the program from printing the entire line that was stored in line of text to just printing the first token, which should take us right through there. Okay, it should be the double quotes and the date in between. So let's see if this works, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about this comment. Okay, so clang strtok.c, and what did I do wrong? Oh, I forgot a major thing, and it's right here. I forgot to include string.h. So no harm, no foul. I'll just go put it in. Okay, so right here, pound include string.h, and that's because we need it in order to pull in the strtok functionality. Okay, so I'll compile it, run it, and sure enough, it just pulled out the date, and it did not, grab anything else. So we grab the whole line. We grab the whole line here at line 38 and store it here, and then we go after this buffer and start picking off things. So after the first call to strtok, that's right here, lines 15 through 20, you can see there's a difference right here where there was a comma before. And notice this comma is the delimiter character. Where there was a comma before, when we called strtok the first time, it started reading characters, all these characters, right up until it found the comma. And when it got to the comma, it overwrote it with a null character. And so now it made a perfect C string because it's null terminated characters. And then strtok maintains an internal pointer that points to the first character after where it wrote the null. And the reason it's doing that is going to become clear when we make the second call. Okay, so the first call basically gets us the first token from the buffer. And then here, because we don't have a new line in the buffer, up here there's no new line. We just grabbed the date. I'm going to put a new line right here on line 42 and recompile. And now you'll notice that it prints properly. And these are all the dates that we pulled out of every line that we read in. We just took out the first token. Okay, so let's get all the tokens now. Okay, so the way we do that is we create a while loop. So now we're into a nested while loop situation. And I'll explain the syntax here in a second. Okay, so now I'm going to make a subsequent call to strtok, strtok. But notice the difference. On the second and subsequent calls, I'm going to call it with null as the first argument to the function rather than line of text. I only use the buffer name the first time we call strtok against a line of text. Each subsequent, until we exhaust all of the tokens in here, will be called using this special null parameter. Okay, and we want to split on character. Okay, and actually, I'll just move this printf here on 42 inside the loop. And that way I don't have to put it in twice. So our first call is outside the while loop. That's called a priming read. And then we test to see if PCH is non-zero. And if it's got a valid pointer, it's non-zero. And then it will print out the token that we just got. And then it will make the second call to strtok. And because we passed it null, strtok knows from its internal pointer that it's going to start right here at the character after the previous null that it wrote. So after the second call, which is about to happen, you can see that strtok has written another null, and it's going to return the negative $20, and its internal pointer is going to get updated to point right after the second null. And again, the purpose of that is so on a subsequent call, strtok knows where it's going to start working, and then it will get the star, and the next call it will get the blank check number, the next call it will get the description. And so we'll loop around, and when we finally exhaust the string in this buffer here, then strtok is going to return a null. This will loop around, and the null is going to cause the while test to fail, and then the while will continue on here, and then we'll come up here and get the next line from the file. Well, then we have a whole new line in the buffer. Then we will call pch equals strtok with line of text, because that's our first call to the new string that we brought in from the file. And so it'll do that and loop around. And so at this point, we should be able to see all of the tokens all of the lines being broken up into tokens and coming out accordingly. And here they are. So you can see that we read in an entire line from the file in one call. But then on output, it got the date and printed a new line. Then it got the amount and printed a new line, the cleared flag, the check number, which is empty, and the description. And then it goes on to the second line, and it breaks those up into 5 tokens, 5 tokens, and 5 tokens. In fact, let's put a number in there to make it easier to track that. So what I'll do is I'll come down here and I'll create an integer variable, and I'll call it token num, and I'll say it's equal to 1, because every time we enter this loop, we're going to be at the first token. And so down here in the printf statement, I'll put in a %d colon and a space. And then here I'll say token num. Okay, and then after I get the next token, I will increment it. I could actually increment it here. There we go. Now, each time we get a new line, it'll reset token num back to 1 if I did this correctly. Let's see if this works out. Okay, so every time through, it's numbering the tokens. And so now we have a way to tell, while we're processing, where we are in the process. Our program now knows if we're looking at token 1 or token 2 or token 3, etc. And so we can expand on this and take advantage of that fact, to do things when we want to do something with a specific token. Okay, there's more to talk about here, so I'll cut it here so the lecture doesn't get too long.